please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means everything, and I promise you this story is for everyone who has ever needed permission to put themselves first. Drop a comment below about your own experience with toxic relationships. Now let me take you back to where this nightmare really began. I grew up in a town called Millbrook, one of those places where everyone knew everyone else's business and family ties meant everything. My parents, Robert and Eleanor Reed, had lived there their entire lives. My father ran a small construction business that his father had started, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom who seemed to spend most of her time at church functions and gossiping with her friends. From the outside, we looked like a normal middle-class family. We had a 3-bedroom house with a yard, 2 cars in the driveway, and we never missed Sunday dinner at my grandmother's house. But inside those walls, there was a hierarchy, and I learned early on where I stood in it. My brother Brandon was 5 years older than me, and from the moment I could form memories, I knew he was the favorite. He was the firstborn, the son, the one who would carry on the family name and business. When Brandon got straight C's in school, my parents said he was a hands-on learner who did not need books. When I got straight A's, my mother would pat my head absently and say, "That was nice, dear, but did not. I think I should spend less time studying and more time being social." When Brandon crashed my father's truck at 16, drunk, my parents paid for the repairs and the lawyer and told everyone it was just boys being boys. When I came home 10 minutes past curfew at 17 because I had been at the library finishing a project, I was grounded for 2 weeks for being irresponsible and untrustworthy. I learned to be quiet, to be helpful, to not make waves. I learned that love in my family was conditional based on usefulness rather than inherent worth. But I kept hoping that if I was good enough, smart enough, successful enough, they would finally see me as more than just the spare child. High school was my escape. I threw myself into academics and discovered architecture through a summer program for gifted students. I fell in love with the idea of creating spaces, of building something permanent and beautiful that would outlast me. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Patterson, saw something in me and helped me apply for scholarships. She was the one who encouraged me to aim for the state university's competitive architecture program. When I got in with a full scholarship, I was ecstatic. I ran home to tell my parents, expecting them to be proud. My mother was in the kitchen making dinner, and my father was in the living room reading the paper. Brandon was upstairs in his room, probably sleeping off another hangover. "Mom, Dad, I got in full scholarship to state for architecture." I was practically bouncing with excitement. My mother looked up from the pot she was stirring, her expression mild. "That is nice, sweetie. Did you pick up the dry cleaning like I asked?" "I what? Mom, did you hear me? Full scholarship. That is $30,000 a year they are giving me because of my grades and portfolio." My father folded his newspaper with a sigh, as if I was interrupting something important. "Yeah, we heard you. Good job. But you know, Alex, we were thinking you might want to go to community college instead. Stay closer to home. Help out with the family business." I stared at him, not understanding. "But this is a full scholarship to one of the best architecture programs in the state. It is a huge opportunity." "Architecture," my father snorted. "That is not a real career, Alex. That is hobby stuff. What we need is someone with a good head for numbers to help manage the business side of things. Your brother, well, he is not cut out for the paperwork. But you are smart with that kind of thing." "I do not want to do paperwork for the construction business," I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. "I want to be an architect. I have been working toward this for years." My mother turned from the stove, her face pinched. "Alex, do not use that tone with your father. We are just thinking about what is best for the family. You know Brandon is going to take over the business eventually, and he will need help. You have always been so good at organizing things. Would not it be nice to work together to keep things in the family? What about what I want?" The words came out smaller than I intended. My father stood up, and I instinctively took a step back. He had never hit me, but his presence when he was angry was enough. "What you want?" "Let me tell you something, young lady. This family has sacrificed a lot to raise you. We put a roof over your head, food on the table, clothes on your back. You think that came free? You think you do not owe us anything. Family takes care of family. That is how it works." "But I have a scholarship," I whispered. "It would not cost you anything." "It is not about the money. my mother said, but her tone suggested it was absolutely about the money. It is about loyalty. It is about remembering where you came from. Going off to some fancy university getting big ideas you will change. You will forget about us. I would not forget about you. They always say that, my father said darkly. Then they leave and never come back. Is that what you want? To abandon your family? I felt the familiar weight settling on my chest, the guilt that had been cultivated in me since childhood. The sense that wanting anything for myself was inherently selfish. I looked at my mother's disappointed face, my father's stern expression, and I almost caved. Almost. But then I thought about Mrs. Patterson, about the professors who had reviewed my portfolio and called it exceptional, about the future I could have if I just took this chance. I am going, I said, my voice shaking but determined. I am sorry if that disappoints you, but this is my life. My father's face went red. Fine, go. But do not come crying to us when you need help. You are making your choice, and you will live with the consequences. I went to college on that scholarship, and for the first 2 years my parents barely spoke to me. They did not come to Parents' Weekend. They did not send care packages. When I called home, my mother's responses were clipped and cold, and my father would not come to the phone at all. Brandon never called or texted. It was like I had been erased from the family. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. I watched my roommate's parents visit, bringing homemade cookies and warm hugs, and I felt the absence of my own family like a physical ache. But I threw myself into my studies, into my designs, into building the future I had dreamed of. Then, in the spring of my sophomore year, everything changed. My mother called me, her voice warm and friendly, like the Cold War had never happened. "Alex, honey, how are you? We have missed you so much." I was so starved for their approval that I latched onto that warmth immediately. "I have missed you too, Mom. How is everything at home?" "Oh, you know the usual. Your father's business is doing well. Brandon is learning the ropes, though. Between you and me, he is not quite as sharp as we had hoped." She laughed, a conspiratorial sound that made me feel included for the first time in years. "But we are managing. Listen, sweetie, your father and I were thinking maybe you could come home for spring break. We would love to see you." I went home that spring break, hopeful that we had turned a corner. The house looked the same, maybe a little more worn around the edges. My mother cooked my favorite dinner, and my father actually asked about my classes. Brandon was polite, if distant. It felt like maybe finally they were proud of me. On the last night of my visit, my father asked me to come into his office. It was a small room off the kitchen where he kept his business files and did paperwork. He sat behind his desk, and I took the chair across from him, feeling like I was about to get a performance review. "Alex, your mother and I have been talking, and we want you to know how proud we are of you." He started, and my heart soared. "Going to college, doing well in your classes, you have really shown a lot of maturity." "Thank you, Dad, that means a lot." "The thing is," he continued, his tone shifting slightly, "your old man has run into a bit of a cash flow problem. Nothing serious, just a timing issue with some big contracts. I am owed a lot of money, but it will not come in for a few months, and in the meantime I have got payroll and suppliers to deal with. You understand how business works, right?" I nodded slowly, not sure where this was going. "Good. So I was thinking you are doing so well at school. You have probably got some money saved up from that scholarship money, right? The thing is, they give you money for living expenses and books and all that, but you are a smart girl. I bet you have been careful with it. Dad, the scholarship money just covers tuition and fees. I have a part-time job at the campus bookstore for living expenses, and I am pretty much living paycheck to paycheck." His expression hardened slightly. "Come on, Alex, do not play games with me. I know how these scholarships work. They give you extra. You must have a few thousand saved up at least." "I really do not, Dad. I have maybe $300 in my checking account." "300? He looked genuinely angry now. "What have you been doing with all that money, blowing it on going out partying? I thought you were smarter than that." "I am not partying. I am working and studying. My scholarship literally only covers tuition fees and books. Everything else I have to pay for myself. Rent, food, everything." My mother appeared in the doorway, her arms crossed. Alex, your father is in a really difficult position right now. If he does not make payroll, he could lose the business. Our business. The business that has supported this family for 2 generations. And you are telling me you cannot help with a few $1,000s. I do not have a few $1,000s, Mom. I have 300. Then you can get it, my father said flatly. You are over 18. You can get a credit card, take out a small student loan. It is not that complicated. I felt like the floor was tilting beneath me. You want me to take out a loan to give you money? It is not giving, it is lending, my mother said quickly. We will pay you back as soon as the contracts pay out. 3 months tops. But why cannot you get a business loan? My father slammed his hand on the desk, making me jump. Because the banks are being unreasonable. They want collateral. I do not have right now. They want financial statements that make the situation look worse than it is. It is all red tape and bureaucracy. But you are young, you have good credit. You could get a small personal loan easily. I do not know, Dad. That seems risky. What if I need that credit for school or an emergency? What emergency? My mother's voice had taken on that sharp edge I remembered from childhood. You are at school. You have a roof over your head. You have food from the dining hall. What emergency could you possibly have that is more important than saving your family's livelihood? The guilt crashed over me like a wave. They were right. Was not I being selfish? What kind of daughter would I be if I let my family lose everything over a few $1,000s? I thought about the 2 years of silence, the coldness, the feeling of being cut off. I did not want to go back to that. How much do you need? I heard myself ask. My father's expression shifted immediately, becoming warm again. 5,000 would get us through, maybe 7 to be safe. $7,000. It felt like an impossible amount, but I found myself nodding. Okay, I will see what I can do. That is my girl, my father said, standing up to clap me on the shoulder. I knew you would come through. You are a real Reed. Family first, right. Right, I echoed, trying to ignore the sick feeling in my stomach. I went back to school and applied for a student loan for $7,000, telling myself it was for living expenses and educational costs, which was not technically a lie since I was giving up the money I would have used for those things. The loan was approved within a week. I transferred the money to my father's account. For the next few months, my parents were warm and loving. They called, regularly asked about my classes, sent care packages. I told myself this was what family was supposed to be like. I had been right to help them. Then 3 months passed, then 6 months, then a year. I never saw that $7,000 again. When I graduated with honors and landed a job at a prestigious architectural firm in the city, my family threw me a party. It was the first time they had celebrated any of my achievements, and I was so grateful, so happy to finally feel like I belonged that I ignored the warning signs. 2 months after I started my new job, my mother called. Alex, sweetie, we have a little problem. Your father's truck broke down and we need a new one for the business. The thing is, his credit is not great right now because of some late payments during that rough patch last year, but your credit is perfect. Would you mind co-signing on a truck loan? It is his truck, his payment. You would not have to pay anything. We just need your signature. I should have said no. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to say no. But the memory of those 2 years of silence, the fear of losing the warmth and approval I had finally gained, it made me weak. How much is the loan? Only $30,000. It is a work truck, so it has to be reliable. But like I said, he will make all the payments. You are just helping him qualify. It is really not a big deal. I co-signed the loan. 3 months later, I got a call from the bank saying payments were 60 days overdue and they needed to speak with me immediately. When I called my father, he was irritated that I had bothered him about it. I will pay it when I have the money, Alex. Stop nagging. You sound like your mother. I ended up making the truck payments for 6 months before I could refinance it solely in my name, and then struggled to keep up with the $700 monthly payment on top of my own bills. My savings disappeared. I started using credit cards for groceries and gas. But that was just the beginning. Over the next few years, the requests kept coming. Brandon got arrested for drunk driving and needed bail money. My mother needed help with property taxes. My father's business had another rough quarter and needed an influx of cash. The air conditioner broke. The roof needed repairs. On and on and on. Every request came with the same emotional manipulation. If you really loved us. Family takes care of family. After everything we did for you, do you want to see us homeless? You make so much money at that fancy job. It is just a little bit to help us through. I was working 60-hour weeks, taking on extra freelance projects, skipping meals to save money. My apartment was a tiny studio in a bad neighborhood because it was all I could afford after sending money home every month. I drove a 15-year-old car that broke down constantly. I wore the same rotation of professional clothes until they were threadbare. My coworkers started to notice. Sophia, a senior architect who had taken me under her wing, pulled me aside one day after I had dozed off at my desk for the third time that week. "Alex, honey, are you okay? You look exhausted. Is everything all right?" I wanted to tell her the truth. I wanted to break down and admit that I was drowning, that I had not had a full night's sleep in months because I was constantly worried about money, that I had panic attacks every time my phone rang because it might be my family with another crisis. But the shame stopped me. "I am fine," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just been working hard. You know how it is." Sophia did not look convinced, but she let it go. She just squeezed my shoulder and said, "My door is always open if you need to talk. About anything." That same week, I met David. It was at a networking event for young professionals that I had only attended because there was free food. I was loading up a plate with cheese and crackers, planning to make it last for dinner that night and maybe lunch the next day, when someone behind me said, "Strategic thinking. I like it." I turned to find a guy about my age with warm brown eyes and a friendly smile. He was holding 2 plates, both piled high with food. "I am David Chin. I have found that these events are 70% boring conversations and 30% decent catering, so might as well make the catering count right." I laughed despite myself. "Alex Reed, and you are absolutely right. Though I might put the boring conversation percentage higher." "Fair point. Are you planning to make the rounds and do the whole networking thing, or can I interest you in hiding in the corner and making sarcastic commentary about the proceedings?" "That is the best offer I have had all week." We spent the rest of the evening talking, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. David was a junior lawyer at a corporate firm, and he was funny and kind and easy to talk to. When he asked for my number, I hesitated for a second, thinking about how I could not afford to go on dates, could not afford to let anyone get close enough to see how broken my life was. But something about him made me say yes anyway. Our first real date was at a cheap noodle shop because David said it had the best pho in the city and who needed expensive restaurants when you had good pho. I almost cried with relief. We split the bill and it cost me $12, which I could actually afford. David became my sanctuary. When I was with him, I could forget about the constant financial stress, the guilt, the feeling that I was failing everyone all the time. He never pushed me to go to expensive restaurants or take trips I could not afford. He seemed to genuinely enjoy just spending time together cooking at his apartment, watching movies, talking about our dreams and goals. 6 months into our relationship, I made the mistake of introducing him to my family. I had been putting it off, making excuses, but my mother had been increasingly insistent. "You have been dating this boy for half a year and we have not even met him. What are you ashamed of, Alex? Your own family." I should have known it would be a disaster. We drove to Millbrook on a Saturday afternoon, and from the moment we pulled up to the house, I could see David taking in the disrepair, the overgrown yard, the general air of neglect. But he did not comment, just grabbed the bottle of wine he had brought and followed me inside. My mother was in the kitchen, and she immediately zeroed in on David with the intensity of a shark scenting blood. "So, you are the famous David. Alex has told us so much about you. You are a lawyer, is that right? That must pay well." "I am a junior associate, so still working my way up," David said politely. "But I like the work." "Still, lawyers make good money even starting out, do not they?" She was not even trying to be subtle. "Much better than what my husband makes with his little business. You know we have been going through some financial difficulties lately. It is so stressful." "Mom, please," I muttered, but she ignored me. My father came in from the living room where he had been watching TV with Brandon. He shook David's hand with that too firm grip he used to establish dominance. Good to meet you, son. So, what are your intentions with my daughter? Dad, we have been over this. We are just dating. Just dating, my father repeated, looking David up and down. Well, if it gets serious, I hope you know Alex comes with responsibilities. She is a good girl very close to her family. We would expect her husband to understand that family comes first. Family is important, David agreed carefully, and I could see him choosing his words. I come from a pretty tight-knit family myself. Good, good. So you understand about helping out when times are tough. Because times are tough for us right now, and Alex here, she has been such a blessing. Sending money home, making sure we stay afloat. That is what family does. I wanted to sink through the floor. David glanced at me, something complicated flickering in his eyes, but he just nodded politely. Brandon slouched into the kitchen, looking David over with barely concealed disdain. Another suit? What is Alex trying to do, work her way up the social ladder? Forget where she came from. Brandon, do not start, I warned. What I am just saying, you have changed. Used to be you cared about family. Now you are all about your fancy job and your fancy boyfriend. But you still expect us to treat you like nothing has changed. I have not changed, and I do not expect anything from any of you. Really, because Mom said you were complaining about the last loan you gave Dad. Said you were being difficult about paying it back. I stared at my mother, who suddenly became very interested in the pot she was stirring. That is not what happened. I just asked when he thought he might be able to start paying it back because I am having trouble keeping up with my own bills. See? There it is. You make good money at that architecture firm and you are complaining about helping your own father. Meanwhile, I am here working for nothing in the business and you do not hear me complaining. You are working for nothing because you crash every work truck Dad buys you. I shot back, my temper flaring. And you are not working anyway. You are sleeping off hangovers and playing video games. Brandon's face went red. At least I am here. At least I did not abandon the family the first chance I got. I did not abandon anyone. I am sending you all money I do not even have. All right, enough, my father said sharply. Alex, you are upsetting your mother. Brandon, go back to the living room. David, why do not you and I go look at the truck? I want to show you the modifications I have been making. It was a transparent attempt to separate us, probably so my father could feel out how much money David might be willing to contribute to the family coffers. But David went along politely, and I was left in the kitchen with my mother. You did not have to say that about Brandon, she said quietly, her voice hurt. You know how sensitive he is about his situation. His situation, Mom. He is 30 years old and has never held down a real job, and now he is drinking like Dad and blaming everyone else for his problems. How is that being sensitive? He has had a hard time, she defended. Not everyone is as naturally talented as you are, Alex. Some people struggle. That is why family is important, to support each other through the struggles. I am struggling too, I said, hearing my voice crack. I am barely making rent. I am working myself to exhaustion, and no one seems to care about that. My mother's expression shifted, becoming harder. Do not be dramatic. You have a good job, a nice boyfriend, your whole life ahead of you. What do you have to struggle with? Meanwhile, your father and I are trying to keep from losing everything we have worked for our entire lives. Brandon is dealing with depression. But you are doing fine. You just do not want to help because you are becoming selfish. The words hit like a slap. Selfish. The worst thing I could be in my family's eyes. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. The dinner was tense and uncomfortable. My parents kept making pointed comments about money, about how successful people help their less fortunate relatives, about how families should always come first. Brandon made snide remarks about my job and my life choices. Through it all, David remained polite but distant, and I could see him pulling back, reassessing everything. In the car on the way home, he was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, Alex, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. How much money have you given your family? I did not want to answer. I did not want to see the judgment in his eyes when he found out how weak I had been, how easily manipulated, but something about the gentleness in his voice made me tell the truth. I do not know exactly. Tens of thousands at least. Maybe more. I stopped keeping track because it was too depressing. And have they paid any of it back? No. Do they ever plan to pay any of it back? They say they will, but no, I do not think they actually will. He pulled over to the side of the road and turned to face me. Alex, you know this is not normal, right? Parents are supposed to support their children, not the other way around. And definitely not to the point where you are struggling to pay your own bills. I know it looks bad, but you do not understand. They really are having financial problems, and I am their daughter. If I do not help them, who will? What about your brother? Brandon does not have any money. Maybe because he knows he does not have to earn any, because you will always bail them out. David reached over and took my hand. Alex, I am not trying to attack you, or them. But from where I am sitting, this looks like financial abuse. They are manipulating you, guilting you, and bleeding you dry, and you are letting them because you are afraid they will cut you off if you say no. That is not fair. Is not it? What happens when you do not give them money? Do they get cold? Do they stop calling? Do they make you feel like a bad daughter? I could not answer because he was right. He was absolutely right, and I had been refusing to see it for years. I do not know how to stop, I whispered. They are my family. Family is not supposed to hurt you, Alex. Family is not supposed to take advantage of you, and if they do, you are allowed to protect yourself even from them. I cried then right there in David's car on the side of the highway, all the stress and fear and exhaustion pouring out of me. He held me while I sobbed, and when I was done, he said quietly, I am here. Whatever you need, I am here. But you are going to have to decide what kind of life you want, because you cannot keep doing this. It is destroying you. That conversation should have been a wake-up call. It should have been the moment I drew a line and started setting boundaries. But change is harder than it looks, especially when you have been conditioned your whole life to believe that your worth is tied to your usefulness, that love is something you have to earn through sacrifice. Instead of pulling back, I doubled down. I started taking on even more freelance work, sometimes staying up all night to finish projects so I could send more money home. I told myself that if I just helped them through this rough patch, if I just gave a little more, eventually they would get back on their feet, and I would get my life back. David tried to be patient, but I could see the relationship straining under the weight of my family's constant demands. We had to cancel plans because I had to work. I could not contribute to rent when he suggested we move in together because I was always broke. When he mentioned meeting his parents, I put it off because I was ashamed of how I looked, how tired and worn down I was. One night, about a year into our relationship, David came over to my apartment and found me having a panic attack. I had just gotten off the phone with my mother, who had called to tell me that my father needed surgery, and they did not have the money for the copay. She needed $15,000 by the end of the month, or they would have to postpone the surgery, and who knew what could happen to him while they waited. I could not breathe. My chest was tight. My vision was tunneling, and all I could think about was my father dying because I did not have the money to save him. David found me hyperventilating on the floor, tears streaming down my face. He got me through the panic attack, and then he sat me down and said, Alex, you need to listen to me. This has to stop. Right now. You are having panic attacks. You are not sleeping. You are barely eating. You are working yourself to death, and it is still not enough because it will never be enough. They will always need more. But the surgery, I gasped. He needs surgery. Does he, or is that another manipulation? When is the surgery supposed to be? I do not know. Mom did not say. Call her right now. Ask her for the specific details. The hospital, the doctor, the date of the surgery. Ask to see the medical bills. I cannot do that. She will think I do not trust her. You should not trust her, Alex. She has been lying to you for years. Please, just call and ask. With shaking hands, I called my mother back. Mom, I need more information about Dad's surgery. What hospital is it at? There was a pause. St. Mary's, I think, or maybe regional. I would have to check. And when is it scheduled? They said within the next month, depending on when we can pay the copay. Can you send me the paperwork? The bill from the hospital? Why do you need that? Her voice had turned cold. Do not you trust us, Alex, your own parents. It is not about trust. I just need to see the details so I can figure out how to help. This is ridiculous. Your father needs surgery and you are demanding paperwork like we are strangers. You have really changed Alex. That boyfriend of yours has turned you against your own family. Mom, I just want to see the bills. We do not have them here. They are at the business office. I will have your father send them later. But I am very hurt by this, Alex. Very hurt that you would question us like this. She hung up on me. I never received any paperwork. And 3 weeks later, I saw my father on Brandon's social media, healthy and fine, at a bar watching a football game. There had been no surgery, no medical emergency, just another lie to extract money from me. That was when something inside me finally broke. Or maybe it finally healed. I looked at David, who was watching me with sad, knowing eyes, and I said, "You are right. This has to stop." "What are you going to do?" "I do not know yet, but I cannot keep doing this." We spent that night researching financial abuse, talking to a lawyer friend of David's about my options, looking at my finances to see just how deep in the hole I really was. The number was staggering. Between the money I had given directly to my family and the debt I had accumulated trying to keep up with my own bills while supporting them, I was over $80,000 in the red. $80,000 over 4 years. $20,000 a year. I was giving my family more than a quarter of my salary, and they were still demanding more. "You need to cut them off," David said. "Completely. No more money, no more loans, no more co-signing. You need to focus on paying down your own debt and rebuilding your life." "They will never forgive me?" "Then they will never forgive you. Alex, they are not going to change. This is who they are. The only thing you can control is how you respond to them." I knew he was right. I knew I had to do something. But knowing and doing are two very different things. I started small. When my mother called the next week asking for money for the property taxes, I said, "I cannot afford to help right now. I am sorry." The reaction was immediate and vicious. "What do you mean you cannot afford it? You make $70,000 a year. And I have $80,000 in debt because of all the money I have given you and Dad over the years." "You were not giving us money, you were lending it. And we said we would pay you back when we could. You are being very unfair right now, Alex. I need to focus on my own finances for a while. I am sorry, but I just cannot keep doing this." "I cannot believe you are doing this. Your father and I are about to lose the house, and you are worried about your credit card bills. What kind of daughter are you? One who needs to take care of herself for once. Selfish, that is what you are. Selfish and ungrateful. After everything we sacrificed for you, I knew that boyfriend was a bad influence. He has turned you into someone I do not even recognize. Mom, I have to go." "Do not you dare hang up on me. Alex, Alex." I hung up. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. But I had done it. I had said no. The backlash was immediate and unrelenting. My phone exploded with calls and texts. My mother alternated between sobbing messages about how I was destroying the family and vicious texts calling me names I will not repeat. My father sent threatening messages about my duty as a daughter and how I would regret this decision. Brandon posted on social media about what a stuck-up, selfish bitch his sister had become, how I thought I was too good for my own family now that I had a fancy job and a rich boyfriend. His friends piled on people I had gone to high school with, people who had known me my whole life. They called me trash, a fake, a social climber who had abandoned her roots. Someone posted my phone number and I started getting calls from strangers telling me I was a terrible person. Someone else posted my work address and my company's receptionist had to field calls from people demanding I be fired. It was a nightmare. I was on the verge of just giving in, just sending them the money to make it stop when Sophia knocked on my office door. "We need to talk," she said, and her expression was serious. I followed her to her office, my heart pounding. Was I about to be fired? Had the harassment gotten to be too much for the company? But when Sophia closed the door, she did not look angry. She looked sad and concerned. "Alex, honey, sit down. I have been watching you struggle for a while now, and I did not want to overstep, but after seeing what is happening online and the calls we have been getting, I think it is time we had an honest conversation. What is going on? I broke down. Right there in Sophia's office, I told her everything about the years of financial abuse, the lies, the manipulation, the debt, about how I had tried to set a boundary and my family had responded by trying to destroy my reputation, about how I felt like I was drowning and I did not know how to stop it. Sophia listened to all of it, and when I was done, she reached across her desk and took my hand. First of all, you are not getting fired. Second, we are going to fix this. All of it. But you need to be willing to go all the way. Half measures will not work with people like your family. Are you ready to do whatever it takes to protect yourself? I think so, but I do not know if I am strong enough. You are stronger than you think, and you are not alone. Now, here is what we are going to do. Over the next week, Sophia became my advocate. She went to HR and the managing partners and explained the situation. The firm issued a statement supporting me and threatening legal action against anyone spreading defamatory content about their employee. They offered me a leave of absence with pay so I could deal with the situation without worrying about work. They even connected me with their legal team who offered to help at a reduced rate. David was working on his end too. Through his firm, he found me Jennifer Walsh, a senior partner who specialized in financial fraud and family law. She was in her 50s with steel gray hair and the kind of no-nonsense demeanor that made you feel like everything would be okay as long as she was in your corner. Jennifer listened to my story, took notes, and then looked at me with frank, assessing eyes. This is going to be a fight. Your family will not go quietly. They will try to manipulate you, guilt you, maybe even threaten you. The question is, are you ready for that? I have to be. I cannot keep living like this. Good. Then we start by documenting everything. Every loan, every request, every threat, every piece of manipulation. We build an airtight case. Then we give them one chance to back off peacefully. When they do not, because they will not, we take legal action. Legal action. We sue them for the money you are owed. We file for restraining orders. We make it clear that their behavior is not only immoral, but illegal. Most importantly, we protect you from any future attempts to use your credit or identity. Will that not just make things worse? It will make things different. Right now, you are their victim. After this, you will be the one in control. Yes, it will be hard. Yes, it will hurt. But it is the only way to truly free yourself from them. I agreed, and Jennifer got to work. With David's help, I pulled together every piece of financial documentation I had. Bank statements going back 6 years, copies of loan agreements, text messages and emails asking for money, social media posts where my family had publicly harassed me. We built a timeline of abuse that was undeniable. Jennifer also suggested I hire a private investigator. If your family is willing to lie to you about medical emergencies and forge your signature, chances are they are hiding other things. Let's find out what. The private investigator, Marcus Thorne, was a former police detective who now ran his own firm. He was in his early 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. David's firm agreed to cover his fees as part of my case. Give me 2 weeks, Marcus said. I will tell you everything there is to know about your family. He was true to his word. 2 weeks later, I sat in Jennifer's office while Marcus presented his findings, and each revelation was like a punch to the gut. My father's business was not struggling. It was actually quite profitable and had been for years. The problem was that my father had a severe gambling problem. He was betting thousands of dollars a week on sports, and when he lost, which was often, he needed quick cash to cover the debts. That was where my money had been going. Not to save the business or pay the mortgage, but to pay off gambling debts and loan sharks. My mother was not ignorant of this. She was an active participant, using the money I sent for luxury shopping and spa treatments while crying poor to anyone who would listen. The medical emergency that had never happened. They had used that $15,000 request to buy a new car. A nice one. For my mother. Brandon was not just lazy and unmotivated. He was a con artist. He had multiple fraud charges in his past, mostly minor scams he had run on acquaintances and former girlfriends. He also owed significant money to some dangerous people for drug debts, and he had been pressuring my parents to squeeze more money out of me to pay them off. But the worst revelation was this: I was not their first victim. My mother's younger sister Sarah had cut off all contact with the family 15 years ago. Marcus tracked her down and spoke with her. She told a story that was eerily similar to mine. Years of being guilted and manipulated into sending money, loans that were never repaid, escalating demands and vicious backlash when she tried to set boundaries. Eventually, she had moved across the country and changed her phone number to escape them. She had not spoken to them since. There had also been a business partner of my father's in the early days of the company. His name was Thomas Blackwell, and he had sued my father for embezzlement and fraud. He had won the case, but by the time the judgment came through, my parents had hidden their assets and claimed poverty. Thomas had never recovered his money. He had lost his house, his retirement savings, everything because of what my father had done to him. My family was not just toxic. They were predators. Professional victims who found kind, caring people and systematically destroyed them financially and emotionally. I felt sick. All those years, I had believed I was helping them, that I was being a good daughter, that family was supposed to sacrifice for each other. But there had never been sacrifice on their end. There had never been love or gratitude or any intention of changing. I was just a resource to be exploited. I want to press charges, I said quietly. For all of it. The forged signature, the fraud, everything. Jennifer nodded. We can do that. But I need to warn you, criminal charges against family members are complicated. The prosecutors might not want to pursue it. Your family will paint you as vindictive. It is going to get ugly. It is already ugly. That was when my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but something made me answer it. Hello, Miss Reed. This is Patricia Saunders from First National Bank. I am calling to congratulate you on the approval of your business loan application. The full $200,000 has been disbursed to your account as of this morning. The world stopped. What? Your business loan for $200,000. It was approved 3 weeks ago and the funds were deposited this morning. Is there a problem? I did not apply for any loan. There was a pause. Miss Reed, we have your application right here, signed by you, along with all the necessary documentation for a small business startup loan. Someone forged my signature. I need to report this as fraud immediately. Another pause longer this time. I see. I will transfer you to our fraud department right away. I looked at David and Jennifer, my face numb with shock. They had done it again, but this time they had gone too far. $200,000 was not a mistake or a small manipulation. It was a felony, and that was when I knew I could not stop halfway. I had to go all the way no matter the cost, because if I did not, they would destroy me completely. I filed police reports for identity theft and fraud. I contacted the bank and initiated an investigation into the forged loan documents. Jennifer filed civil suits for repayment of all the money they had stolen from me over the years with interest. We filed for emergency restraining orders against all 3 of them. The response was nuclear. My father showed up at my apartment building, pounding on the door and screaming that I was a traitor, that I was destroying the family, that I would regret this. Building security had to escort him out, and that incident alone was enough to get the temporary restraining order approved. My mother went on social media and claimed I was mentally ill, that I was having a breakdown, that I was being controlled by my boyfriend, who wanted to isolate me from my loving family. She posted old photos of us together, me as a child sitting on her lap, me at graduation, hugging them, crafting a narrative of a devoted family torn apart by a daughter who had lost her way. The posts went viral in our hometown. People I had known my whole life were commenting, saying they always knew I was trouble, that I had always thought I was better than everyone else, that my parents were saints for putting up with me. Someone started a GoFundMe for my poor parents who were being victimized by their ungrateful daughter. It raised $30,000 in a week. Brandon took a different approach. He started showing up places where he knew I would be. At my office building, at the grocery store, near my apartment, at the coffee shop where David and I sometimes had breakfast. He did not approach me directly, he just made sure I saw him lurking in the background, a constant, threatening presence. When David confronted him in the parking garage of my building, Brandon just smiled and said, "I am not doing anything illegal. I am just happening to be in the same places as my sister. Is that a crime? It is harassment and you know it. Prove it. Meanwhile, you might want to tell Alex that the people I owe money to are getting impatient. If she does not pay up soon, things might get unpleasant for everyone involved. Is that a threat? That is a fact. She put me in this position by cutting us off. Now she has to live with the consequences. David wanted to go to the police, but Jennifer advised against it. He is careful. He is not saying anything explicitly threatening. It will just be, he said, she said, and it will make Alex look paranoid. But document everything, every sighting, every interaction. If he escalates, we will have the pattern established. The stress was crushing. I could barely sleep because every sound made me think someone was breaking into my apartment. I stopped going to my usual places because I was afraid of running into Brandon or having another confrontation with my parents. I had panic attacks that left me gasping for breath on the floor of my bathroom. David practically moved into my apartment because I was too scared to be alone. Then things got worse. One morning I woke up to find my car had been vandalized. All 4 tires slashed the windows, smashed the word "traitor" spray painted across the hood. The security cameras in my building's parking garage had mysteriously malfunctioned that night, so there was no footage of who had done it. I knew it was them, but I could not prove it. 2 days later, someone called my office pretending to be a client and left a message for me that included my home address, my social security number, and a detailed threat about what they planned to do to people who do not pay their debts. HR took it seriously enough to assign me security escort in and out of the building and suggested I might want to take that leave of absence after all. I was reaching my breaking point. I felt like I was being hunted, like my family would not stop until they had destroyed me completely. I started to wonder if it would be easier to just give in to drop the charges in the lawsuit and go back to being their ATM. At least then I would be safe. David found me sitting on the floor of my apartment at 2 a.m, staring at my phone, ready to call my mother and tell her I was sorry I would do whatever they wanted. He took the phone out of my hand and sat down next to me. Do not do this. Do not let them win. I am so tired, David. I just want it to stop. It will stop, but not if you give in. If you give in now, you will be trapped forever. They will know they can threaten you and scare you, and you will always back down. Is that the life you want? No, but I do not know if I am strong enough for this. You are, and you are not alone. I am here. Sophia is here. Jennifer is here. Marcus is here. We are all fighting for you. You just have to hold on a little longer. I held on. Barely, but I held on. The preliminary hearing for the fraud charges was scheduled for 3 months after I reported the forged loan. In that time, Jennifer and Marcus built an ironclad case. They had handwriting analysis proving the signatures on the loan documents were forgeries. They had IP addresses showing the applications had been submitted from computers in my father's business office. They had testimony from bank employees who remembered my parents coming in to discuss the loan, how my father had insisted it would not be a problem because his daughter had given him permission. They also had my financial records showing the years of bleeding me dry, the patterns of manipulation, the escalating demands. They had text messages and emails where my parents had made threats. They had witness statements from Sophia about my deteriorating health and performance at work due to the stress. They had statements from Aunt Sarah about the similar pattern of abuse she had experienced. The evidence was overwhelming. Even the prosecutor, who had initially been skeptical about pressing charges against a daughter's own parents, admitted that this was one of the most clear-cut cases of family fraud and financial abuse she had ever seen. My father and Brandon were formally charged with identity theft fraud and forgery. My mother was charged as an accessory. They were arrested the week before the preliminary hearing. When I got the call from Jennifer telling me they were in custody, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Relief, guilt, vindication, grief. "This is it," Jennifer said. "This is the point where most families would try to make a deal. Expect them to reach out either directly or through their lawyer to try to negotiate. Do not engage. Everything goes through me." She was right. 2 days later, my parents' lawyer, a local attorney named Richard Hayes, who had a reputation for playing dirty, called Jennifer's office requesting a meeting. Jennifer, David, and I sat on one side of the conference table. Richard Hayes sat on the other, looking smug and confident. My clients are willing to make this all go away, Hayes began. They will agree to drop any civil claims against Alex, they will cease all contact, and they will plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for probation and restitution. What reduced charges? Jennifer asked coolly. Misdemeanor fraud. No jail time. 3 years probation. They pay back $50,000 over 5 years. Your client stole over $100,000 from their daughter over the course of 6 years, forged her signature on a $200,000 loan, vandalized her property, and orchestrated a harassment campaign that has put her in fear for her safety. And you think they should get probation and a slap on the wrist? They are her parents, first-time offenders, both of them. The judge will take that into consideration. Your clients are not first-time offenders. Marcus, if you would. Marcus Thorne slid a folder across the table. Robert Reed has 2 prior fraud convictions from the 80s, both plead down to lesser charges. Eleanor Reed has multiple arrests for shoplifting and check fraud, all of which were dismissed when the victims were paid off. Brandon Reed has a juvenile record that was sealed, but I got it unsealed. 3 counts of fraud, 2 counts of theft, 1 count of assault. And that is just what we found in a few weeks. Who knows what else is out there? Hayes's face went pale. My clients were not aware that I needed that information to adequately represent them. Your clients lied to you, which is what they do. Now, here is my counteroffer. Your clients plead guilty to all charges as filed. They serve whatever sentence the judge deems appropriate. They agree to a permanent restraining order forbidding all contact with my client. And they cooperate with my civil suit to recover the full amount stolen from Alex plus interest and legal fees. In exchange, I will not pursue additional charges for the vandalism, the harassment campaign, or the death threats. Death threats? There have been no death threats. Jennifer pulled out her phone and played a voicemail. A man's voice, muffled and distorted, said, "You are going to pay for what you did to your family. Bitches like you who forget where they came from need to be taught a lesson. Be careful walking to your car at night. Accidents happen." That is not my client's voice. No, but it was sent from a burner phone that was purchased at a convenience store 2 blocks from your client's business office. The store clerk has identified Brandon Reed as the purchaser, so either your clients made the threat or they paid someone to make the threat. Either way, it is a crime. Hayes was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I will take this back to my clients. But I can tell you right now, they are not going to accept a plea that includes jail time. Then we will see them in court." The trial was scheduled for 2 months later. In that time, my family made one last desperate attempt to manipulate me. My grandmother, my father's mother, who I had always had a good relationship with, called me. She was in her 80s and had not been involved in any of the drama up to this point. "Alex, baby, it is Grandma. I need to talk to you about this situation with your parents." "Grandma, I cannot discuss the case." "I am not asking you to discuss the case. I am asking you to think about what you are doing. Those are your parents, sweetheart. Your flesh and blood. I know they made some mistakes, but they love you. Is it really worth sending them to prison over some money?" "It is not just some money, Grandma. They stole over $100,000 from me. They forged my signature. They made threats against me. This is not a mistake. This is a pattern of criminal behavior. But you are doing so well for yourself. You have that good job, that nice boyfriend. You do not need that money anymore. But your parents, if they go to prison, they will lose everything. The house, the business, everything. Is that what you want? To destroy your family?" The guilt washed over me, familiar and suffocating. This was my grandmother, the woman who had baked me cookies and taught me to play cards and told me stories about the old days, and she was making me feel like the villain. But then I remembered what David had said, what Jennifer had said, what Sophia had said. This was not my fault. This was not my responsibility. I was not destroying the family. They had destroyed themselves through their own choices. "Grandma, I love you. But they did this to themselves. I am not doing this to them. I am protecting myself from them. And if you cannot see that if you think I should just let them continue to victimize me, then maybe we need to take some space from each other, too. Alex, please, think about your mother. This is going to kill her. My mother chose to participate in this. She chose to lie to me, to manipulate me, to help steal from me. Those were her choices. And now she has to face the consequences. You have become so hard, so cold. That boyfriend has changed you. No, Grandma. My family changed me. David just helped me see what was really happening. I hung up, and I cried. Because even though I knew I was right, even though I knew I had to protect myself, it still hurt. It still felt like I was losing my family, like I was choosing to be alone. But then Sophia called, and David's mother called a woman I had only met twice, but who had somehow heard what was happening and wanted me to know I was welcome in their home any time I needed a safe place. And Jennifer's assistant sent me a care package with tea and chocolate and a note that said, "You are doing the right thing. Stay strong." I was not alone. I had chosen my family and they had chosen me back. The trial was brutal. It lasted 4 days and every moment felt like torture. The prosecutor laid out the evidence, methodically building a case that was impossible to deny. The forged signatures, the pattern of fraud, the threats and harassment, the financial devastation they had inflicted on me. I had to testify. I had to sit on the stand and recount every moment of manipulation, every lie, every stolen dollar. I had to admit in open court how weak I had been, how easily controlled. I had to face my family across the courtroom and tell strangers about the worst moments of my life. My mother cried throughout my testimony. My father glared at me with such hatred it made my skin crawl. Brandon smirked like this was all just a game. The defense tried to paint me as a vindictive daughter who was exaggerating a few family disagreements. They brought in character witnesses who testified about what wonderful people my parents were, how active they were in the community, how they had struggled financially but always tried their best. They tried to make me look like the villain, the successful daughter who had turned on her own family out of greed and spite. But Jennifer was relentless. She presented the evidence, cross-examined their witnesses, exposed the lies. She brought in Aunt Sarah, who testified about her own experience with my family's abuse. She brought in Thomas Blackwell, who described how my father had destroyed his life. She brought in the bank employees who had processed the fraudulent loan. She brought in Marcus Thorne's findings about my family's history of fraud and deception. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the verdict was unanimous on all counts. Guilty. My father was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. My mother got 2 years. Brandon, who had additional charges from the threats and vandalism that were eventually traced back to him, got 5 years. The civil judgment came through 2 weeks later. My parents were ordered to pay restitution of $120,000, plus legal fees and interest. The total came to over $200,000. Jennifer warned me I would probably never see most of that money. Their assets would be seized, but it would not cover the full amount. "But here is what matters," she said. "You have legal protection now. They cannot contact you. They cannot use your identity. They cannot continue to victimize you. You are free." Free. The word felt surreal. After years of being trapped, of being controlled, of being afraid, I was finally free. The months after the trial were strange. I kept expecting my phone to ring with another crisis, another demand, another manipulation, but it never came. The silence was eerie, at first unsettling. I did not know how to live without the constant background noise of my family's drama. I started therapy with Dr. Sarah Chin, a psychologist who specialized in family trauma and financial abuse. She helped me understand that what I had experienced was not normal, was not my fault, and was going to take time to heal from. "You have been conditioned to believe your worth is tied to your usefulness," Dr. Chin explained in one of our early sessions. "Your family taught you that love was something you had to earn through sacrifice and suffering. Unlearning that pattern, learning to believe you deserve love just for being you, that is going to be the real work." It was hard work. There were days I felt crushing guilt for what had happened to my family, even though I knew intellectually it was not my fault. There were nights I woke up in a panic, convinced they were coming for me. There were moments I questioned everything, wondering if I had overreacted, if I should have just continued to help them. But David was patient. Sophia was supportive. My new chosen family held me up when I could not stand on my own. Work became my refuge. Without the constant financial drain and emotional stress, my creativity exploded. I designed a sustainable housing complex that caught the attention of a major developer. The project was green-lit, and I was promoted to lead architect. 6 months later, I was offered a partnership at the firm. David and I moved in together into a beautiful loft apartment with exposed brick and huge windows and actual furniture that was not second-hand. We adopted Max, the anxious rescue dog, and built a life that was quiet and peaceful and ours. A year after the trial, I launched the Phoenix Fund. It started as an idea, a way to turn my pain into something meaningful. I wanted to help people who were trapped the way I had been, people who did not know they were being abused, people who felt too guilty to save themselves. The fund provided legal resources, financial counseling, and therapy referrals for people escaping financial abuse. We connected victims with lawyers who worked pro bono or at reduced rates. We offered emergency assistance for people who needed help getting out of dangerous situations. We created educational materials about recognizing and responding to financial manipulation. Sophia joined the board. David volunteered his legal expertise. Marcus offered his investigative services at cost for our clients. Even Jennifer took on cases for people we referred to her, sometimes working for free, when the victim truly could not afford to pay. The response was overwhelming. Within the first month, we had helped over 50 people. Within 6 months, we had chapters in 5 states. People who had survived their own experiences with financial abuse volunteered their time and expertise. The fund grew from a small nonprofit into a real movement. I spoke at conferences about financial abuse and toxic family dynamics. My TED Talk, "When Your Family is the Enemy," went viral with over 10 million views. I was interviewed on podcasts, news programs, morning shows. My story resonated with people in ways I had not expected. Thousands of people reached out to share their own experiences, to thank me for giving them permission to protect themselves. 2 years after the trial, we held the Phoenix Fund's second annual gala. It was a celebration of survival of the hundreds of people we had helped escape abusive situations. I was giving the keynote speech talking about the importance of recognizing financial abuse early when I saw her. My mother was standing at the back of the ballroom, partially hidden behind a column. She looked older, smaller somehow. Her hair was gray, her clothes shabby. She had aged a decade in 2 years. Our eyes met across the crowded room. I saw her mouth move, forming words I could not hear. For a moment, time seemed to stop. I thought about walking over to her, asking what she wanted, maybe even trying to understand if she had changed. But then I remembered the years of manipulation, the lies, the theft, the threats, the terror I had felt when I thought they might actually hurt me. And I realized I did not care what she wanted to say. That chapter of my life was closed. I turned back to my speech, to the room full of survivors and supporters, to the life I had built from the ashes of the old one. When I looked back, she was gone. David found me on the balcony after the speech, staring out at the city lights. He wrapped his arms around me from behind. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, and meant it. "I really am." "That was a powerful speech. You are changing lives. You know that we are changing lives. I could not do this without you." "You could. You are stronger than you give yourself credit for, Alex Reed." Maybe he was right. Or maybe strength was not something you were born with, but something you built through surviving, through choosing yourself, even when it was hard, through refusing to be a victim anymore. 3 years after the courthouse speech, I was invited to testify before Congress about financial abuse and the need for stronger legal protections. I sat in that chamber and told my story again, not for myself, but for everyone who was still trapped. I never heard from my family again after that night at the gala. My father finished his sentence and moved to another state. My mother lived in a subsidized apartment in Millbrook, estranged from most of the people she had once called friends. Brandon was still in prison with 2 years left on his sentence. Sometimes I wondered if they thought about me, if they regretted what they had done, if they had learned anything. But mostly, I did not think about them at all. They had taken enough of my life. They did not get to take any more. Looking back now, I can see the truth clearly. I was never the problem. I was never too sensitive, too selfish, too ungrateful. I was a person being systematically exploited by people who were supposed to love me, and recognizing that accepting it and choosing to save myself was not betrayal. It was survival. If you are reading this and you see yourself in my story, if you are drowning in debt because of someone else's choices, if you are being manipulated and guilt-tripped and told that real family would sacrifice anything, please hear me. You are not crazy. You are not selfish. You are not obligated to destroy yourself to save people who are choosing not to save themselves. You deserve love that does not come with an invoice. You deserve support that does not drain you dry. You deserve to keep what you earn and build the life you want. And if the people in your life cannot accept that if they call you selfish for having boundaries, if they punish you for saying no, then they are showing you exactly who they are. Believe them. It took me 8 years and almost $100,000 to learn that lesson. I hope it takes you less time. I hope you find the courage to put yourself first, to walk away from what is killing you, to build something new from the ashes of what was. Because you deserve a life that does not require you to be smaller, poorer, or less than you are. You deserve to take up space. You deserve to thrive. And one day when you are standing in the life you built for yourself, surrounded by people who love you without conditions, you will look back and realize that saving yourself was not selfish. It was the bravest, most important thing you ever did. Family is not who shares your blood. Family is who shows up, who supports you, who celebrates your victories and helps you through your defeats. Family is who you choose, not who you are stuck with. I chose my family. David Sophia, Dr. Chin Marcus, the entire Phoenix Fund community. They are my family now. They chose me too, and that makes all the difference. So, here is my question for you. Have you ever had to make the impossible choice between your own well-being and someone else's expectations? Have you ever been called selfish for protecting yourself? How did you find the courage to put yourself first? Drop your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if this story resonated with you, if you know someone who needs to hear it, please hit that like button and subscribe. Share this video. Start the conversation. Because the more we talk about financial abuse, about toxic family dynamics, about the courage it takes to walk away, the more people we can help break free. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. And remember, you are worth fighting for. Even when no one else sees it, even when the whole world tells you otherwise, you are worth it. Never forget that.